the access, it's also called Oprah. Some people know that as Oprah. That is your ability, your responsibility to have people write to you and say, I want this information or that information. That's not in conflict with your ability to take something down. Now, I would suggest to you that, and I'm sure this is probably instinctive anyway, I probably don't have to say it, but since we're all here together, I'll say it anyway. I am certain that none of you would take something down without keeping a copy of it. I mean, that's just is counterintuitive. So if you did, in fact, get an Oprah request, and someone said, I want to have everything that was posted on your site in this date, and it was during the time period where you took something down, you still would have that to give that to them. So again, they don't negate each other. They can kind of live consecutively together. You had another question, you said?
Yeah, my other question is, we have on Facebook, we have a site who's kind of against the libraries.
Okay.
It's a small site, there's not that many people there, but 17, and we monitor it. We don't post anything, we don't do anything, we just look at it. We let the negative comments happen, we're not interfering at all. How does that play out in this whole thing?
Well, once again, I think that your reaction to that should be, now that you know that it's here, again, I would turn you back to your terms and conditions. Okay. I would think that you should put something on your website that says, listen, we do not endorse, well, let me do it this way. Do you know how sometimes you have these talk shows? And before the talk show goes on, it says, Metro Media, does not endorse, or support it. It's the views of the caller type of thing. I think that's where you have to go down that path. I think you need to put there and say, our policy allows people to put postings on it. We don't endorse any of these policies. We recognize the fact that people can make them, and that's their opinion and their opinion alone. Now, I guess the other question, the other shoe drops is, well, when does it go too far? Right. The Supreme Court in the United States, all these smart people, struggled with the concept of what is pornography. And they couldn't define it because it's different to everybody. And what they said was, in essence, I know pornography when I see it. So you may have a different view than you may have and you may have. And I think that's the same kind of analogy I would use to this. That when something is on your site, if you feel uncomfortable about it, it's probably a good thing to take down. It's probably a good thing to take down. Now, some people may suggest to you that even the better approach may be to tell the person you're taking down. I don't think you should. I don't think you need to do that. I think if you start telling people, and again, I'm not so sure you have it here, but in some companies this is a constant problem, especially people who produce products that may hurt somebody. I mean, if you read Toyota's Facebook, can you imagine? Or even worse, BP. Okay, even worse. So I don't think it's wise for you to alert the person that you're taking down. And I just think that if you have that policy, you indicate on it that you reserve the right to take it down if you deem it to be inappropriate. And you know what? And then if you have to later on retract it, you put it back up. It's almost like the same thing that happens if somebody puts out a newspaper, puts out a magazine, and they say something that's wrong. They'll have a retraction the next time. You can always put it back up. But I think swift, appropriate action to take it down is really the wisest, most prudent approach to take. That's what I think.
We're doing very well. We have over 1,500 fans, and like I said, it's been going for over a year. There's not been one negative comment I've had to worry about. So it's not been a problem for us on Facebook.
Well, that's terrific.
We monitor it and we do look at it every day.
And as I said, there are. I'd be happy to email you or send you my do's and don'ts, or you can go online and get those do's and don'ts. But there's a dozen or so things that, based upon the current status of the law, that people who have these sites need to keep an eye on. And of course, I'll just ever so slightly go into it. These rules also apply in your personal lives. Don't think that statements that your children make cannot be attributed to you. I don't know if you have children and if your children are involved in this thing, but I have to tell you, we had this big family meeting because my son, who's a college student, was saying all kinds of terrible things and allowing all kinds of terrible things on his website. There were curses and all the rest of the stuff, and pictures of him partying at his fraternity house and stuff. And, you know, I sat down with him. We all sat down. And we said, you just can't do this. Well, the person who had the most effect on him was my daughter, who's a few years older. I said to him, listen, you know, I know my employer looks at potential employees' Facebook accounts and sees whether or not there's anything on there that's inappropriate. And thank goodness she was able to persuade him to take it down. But, you know, I think the rules that are applying in the workplace should also be applied for home, because I don't think the kids who do this don't really understand the ramifications of it. They don't understand the implications of, you know, they think it's cool, you know, they think it's really a wonderful thing, you know, I'm acting out, you know, but in essence, it's not the time or the place. And so, you know, that's something else you should think of. Yes, sir?
Is there any distinction between anonymous postings and postings where a person identifies him or herself?
I would be driven more so by the content than the source. If a person puts their name to it, usually, my experience has been that people who do things that are way over the top rarely put their name to it. So I'm more driven in terms of my legal advice on the content. I don't really care where it comes from. If it's inappropriate, it gets pulled. You know, it gets pulled and I take care of it that way. And you know something, it's rare that you're going to have somebody who's going to do something so terribly inappropriate who's going to come back at you. Because first of all, they probably don't have a heck of a lot of money to come after you. That's number one. Number two is that the likelihood is that if they do have the money, they're not going to be successful, so they're just, you know, spending their money for no reason whatsoever. Yes, sir?
A couple questions. One, you mentioned about the liability of workplace using work computers and like that. How does that affect us here at the library where we have like the public computers?
You know, it was funny. I was speaking to Glynis about that when we were talking about it. You know, I think, too, in your particular circumstance, there should be, again, before they are able to access it, I don't know if you have it here, but my suggestion is that before they can get on it, that they need to have to agree to the terms and conditions. Do they have to?
They have to sign a user agreement before they get on it.
Okay.
It's all spelled out in there, you know, what's allowed and that kind of stuff.
And you know, I made this recommendation to a client of mine, and I'm not so sure that it really is enforceable, but it seemed just to make sense to me. You know, clicking on it is okay, having it. But again, I'm back to the issue about was it effective? And so I understand that there's some kind of program out there that won't allow a person to click on it immediately and just move on, that it has to sit there. Now, again, I don't know if you have that technology to do that, but it, in actuality, requires a person to drag through it. So at least you're causing them to have to do something before they click off.
We have gotten law enforcement agents involved when we needed to. For
Oh, I'm sure that you do. I'm sure that you do. Well, listen, I'm going to answer your question offline because our videographer is about ready to finish up. I just wanted to leave you with a couple of extra thoughts before we end up. You know, it's always kind of funny to me. When I was a kid, if my mother mentioned the word viral, that was a bad thing. Now, today, if it's viral, it's a good thing. You know, the whole language is really quite remarkable about how things have changed. And again, my encouragement to you is that this thing is an ever increasing, and it's getting more rapid, and that it really is incumbent upon all of you to make sure that you stay on top of it. And if you have somebody who's responsible for it, that you make sure that that person keeps you guys in the loop. So thank you very much for listening, for coming here today. I hope you've learned something. And as I said, we can go off camera and we can talk about any other questions you have. Thank you.